Welcome to NCBI Labs.
So you're very welcome to this NCBI Labs live event special. As you know, we've been with you for the last 18 months or so, and over that time we've already covered 50 shows, believe it or not. But over those 50 shows, one of the more exciting developments that we talked about was the Microsoft Soundscape app, which we covered all the way back on live event number 11. But while it definitely felt like it was maybe a bit of a game changer, there was one drawback, and it was a significant one for us here in Ireland. It wasn't actually available here yet. So we had to wait for it to be launched here. But the wait is over because today is launch day. In partnership with NCBI, Microsoft has today launched Soundscape in Ireland. Now we reckon that's definitely worth a live event special. So today we're going to devote the entire show to the launch of Soundscape in Ireland. And we have a number of guests with us this week from both NCBI and the Soundscape team to talk to us about the features of Soundscape and also the work that went into getting it ready for release here in Ireland. But before we introduce our guests, just to let you know that this is your key opportunity. Because we have members of the Soundscape team here with us today, if you want to ask any questions about Soundscape, today is a great opportunity to do that. We have the right team here with us today to be able to answer even your most difficult questions. So whatever you'd like to ask, you can get in touch through the question panel on the right-hand side of your Microsoft Teams screen, or you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie, and we'd love to hear from you at any point throughout the show. Get in touch if you have any questions or comments. Please get in touch. Now, with us on the show this week, it's probably a good thing that we're not all trying to crowd into the one studio here, because along with Sean Doran, JP Corcoran and myself, we have Chantelle Smith, also from NCBI. We have Karen O'Mahony with us as well. We have Amos Miller, Jarnell Judge, Fraser Carr and Stephen Abrams, all from the Soundscape team as well. So good to have everyone with us today, and we'll get a chance to hear from everybody on the call with us today throughout the show. But perhaps to start with, we can talk specifically about the origins of Soundscape. Now, Amos Miller is a product strategist at Microsoft Research and has served as president of Guide Dogs Singapore and chairman of the board for Guide Dogs for the Blind in the UK. And along with Amos, we have Jarnell Judge, who is a design and innovation architect in the Enable Group at Microsoft Technology and Research, and more importantly, both are co-founders of Microsoft Soundscape. So you're very welcome to the show, Amos and Jarnell. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Great to have you with us, and I think we have Jarnell there now as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Great.
Yeah, we're delighted to be here.
Brilliant, good stuff. So we're going to talk in a few minutes about the features of Soundscape and what exactly it does, but maybe just a nice place to start is just to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind Soundscape, what challenge it was designed to meet, if you like. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So this is Amos. I'm with Microsoft Research on the Soundscape team. I'm the product planner. So very happy to be here today with everyone. It really is it is very exciting for us to finally be in a position to release Soundscape in Ireland, and we want to say thank you for making us feel so welcome.
It's great to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you. And would it be okay if I spend just maybe 90 seconds just explaining what Soundscape is for people?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can take a step back and talk about the inspiration.
Work with it.
Yeah, great. Soundscape is very much one of the leading apps for wayfinding and navigation by the blind and low vision community worldwide. And what makes it really special is, first of all, how easy it is to use, and hopefully that will come across today as we go through it, and also how clearly it helps you know where you are and in which direction you need to go when you use it. It's very, very simple to use. You go to the App Store, download it, turn it on, and just walk. You'll walk and it will come to life, and you'll see very quickly how it works. And what's really cool about it, which we'll talk about, is that we use special 3D audio technology so that if you use Soundscape with stereo headphones, you'll actually hear the call-outs in 3D around you, which sounds awesome.
Excellent.
For example, if you walk along and there's a cafe coming up on your right, let's say Starbucks, you'll hear the word Starbucks and you'll actually hear it in front of you and on your right. So you know in which direction it is, and you'll kind of hear as it approaches you on your right. If you walk up to an intersection, you'll hear a name of a road all the way on your left, one in front of you, one on your right, so you get a real sense for the structure of the intersection. And we'll talk about some of the really cool features that Soundscape does as we go through the session with you guys today. Chantelle, do you want to maybe jump in a little bit and talk about the inspiration and where this has all come from?
Yeah, sure. And gosh, you might have to cut me short, but Jude, and maybe sort of wondering why did we use sound and not, for example, cameras, a phone's camera or computer vision or machine vision in some way? And really, I think to answer that question, it goes back to the very origins where a good few years ago when Amos made the initial introduction to guide dogs in the UK, and we started having this conversation about how technology can help people be more mobile and be more independent. In many ways, the first and obvious thing that we thought about was using a phone's camera in some way. But equally, I think more importantly, we felt that technology had to support the human experience. And in many ways, we tried to make the technology disappear. We didn't want the person using Soundscape to sort of feel conscious or feel uncomfortable or uneasy, for example, having to take their phone out in order to get information about the environment. And of course, when you use the camera, of course, you absolutely have to do that. And it was during some of the very early research that we were carrying out with the support of guide dogs, in particular orientation and mobility specialists, and some of their clients that they were working with. And it was a visit that we made to, I think, a part of London that was particularly sort of famous for its legal history. So not at all the big, tall buildings, but courtyards, medieval buildings, open spaces, tight, narrow streets, and so on. And it was during one such visit, and on reflection, a couple of days afterwards, when Amos and I were talking about it, Amos mentioned, do you remember that fountain? We always kind of knew where we were in relation to where the sound was coming from, depending on, if we were to the side of it, we might hear the sound of the fountain to the left, or if we'd walked past it, then we'd hear it behind us. And in that discussion, we suddenly sort of realized that, that sound and being able to discern where it was coming from was giving us a sense of where we were in relation to it. And it was kind of anchoring our experience, keeping it grounded in reality in many ways. And that's when we really decided, well, maybe sound that works in the way that we as humans process and listen to the world around us, that could be a really interesting way to look at enhancing a person's awareness and appreciation of their environment. And from that, and a very rough and ready hack that we put together, we conceived the whole notion of primarily using sound, as Amos mentioned, 3D sound, spatial audio to create this rich, immersive experience when you're out and about, or even when you're at home now.
Yeah, brilliant. It sounds very much like just how you describe it there. It's almost like trying to prevent the app from becoming like a gatekeeper for somebody's experience of their surroundings. It's like you more want it to be able to fit in as an additional input as opposed to you experience everything through this app.
That's just beautifully put. Because in many ways, the challenge that we set ourselves is making the technology disappear. And with Soundscape, you put your phone in your bag or your pocket, you put on your headphones, and you're just like everybody else. Yeah. You're indistinguishable from anybody else who's walking around listening to music or a podcast or on a call with somebody.
Yeah, very good. The name Soundscape is actually very descriptive, isn't it?
Yeah, once we eventually settled on it.
Did that take a while?
Yeah, no, it's it is descriptive, and it's very much about using sound, using callouts, but as they are in the real world, so that the added augmented information and awareness. It's really about enhancing your awareness, right? And enhancing your sense of where things are. If there's something that's 200 meters and a bit to your right, that's where you'll hear it. And you'll still hear all the traffic, and you'll hear you'll be able to continue your conversation with the people that you're with, or do what you need to focus on your dog if you're working a guide dog or a cane, and still just have a lot more awareness of what's around you and where it is and how it changes position as you move in space, which is some of the experiences. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I mean, you can sort of tell its name is derived from sound and scape from landscape. But as we know, landscape in many ways, particularly when it comes to field of vision, gives you a restricted view of the world. And here, one of the things that we wanted to almost sort of bring to life here for everybody, and Soundscape is for everybody, one of the things that we wanted to bring to life here is that we as people, we don't live in a world which has restricted views. We live in a 3D world, and our ability to be able to create this 3D audio experience around you is absolutely central to that. It seeks to amplify and augment our existing senses in that way.
It's interesting that you say that it's made for everyone. We'll come back to that maybe a little bit later on, because that's quite an interesting idea in itself. But maybe let's see, we have got a video in a moment that we'll play just to give an idea of the way that this functions and what the experience is like. But just before we play that, could you just describe, if somebody's listening to this and they're kind of getting to grips with what we're talking about here, what would you say is like the key difference between this and maybe some navigation app where it's maybe talking you through the steps that you take? It's still coming through sound. It's still something that somebody might wear headphones for. What's the difference with Soundscape? You've kind of described it already, but just put a really kind of simple point on it for anybody who's just a little bit confused.
So it's very much, it helps you with wayfinding and navigation, but it never tells you what to do. It really is about making sure that you have the information you need to make your decision, your navigation decision. So as you walk up to an intersection, we haven't talked about the audio beacon, which is a key navigation feature with Soundscape, that instead of telling you walk 20 meters, turn right, it tells you that the restaurant you're heading to is 40 meters in front of you and on your right. You know where the streets are, you can hear the traffic. You come up to an intersection, you get a layout of the intersection. There is a turning right. You know that the restaurant is on your right. So you will at that point decide to take that turn. The agency is always with the person. You are in control, you are in the driving seat. And when you experience that, it really, you're never in a situation that you're getting instructions that you don't know how to interpret. It's telling you walk 20 meters, in which direction? I don't know which way to go. Do I walk up that street, down the street? Am I on the right street? All of those questions are gone when you use Soundscape. You just go and you know where you are. Chantelle.
Really good.
Yeah. One of the terms that we often use is that instead of being prescriptive, we're descriptive. Because as we know, and we've sort of seen this with Carr sat-nav systems, the moment, or even walking turn-by-turn instructions, the moment that we're given a specific instruction, our attention becomes almost exclusively devoted to following out that instruction. So if it's telling us to walk 20 meters and turn left, in our mind, that's what we're doing. And it sort of closes the rest of the world around us. And one of the things that we wanted to do with Soundscape is that you naturally and effortlessly build up that picture of the space that you're in. And because you know where things are in relation to you, you stress less about having to turn left, because you just take it in your stride, literally.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. We'll kind of maybe delve into that a little bit more in a moment, but it might be a good time to just play a video that gives a little bit of a sense for anybody who's joining us here on Teams Live. It'll give a little bit of a sense of how Microsoft Soundscape works. So let's play that video.
Hi, we are here today to talk about the Microsoft Soundscape app, which is an application that allows anyone with low vision or visual impairment to be able to have mobility and independence. And to help me do that, I have Amos Miller with me to really give us a real demo of this application. Amos, do you want to describe Soundscape?
Soundscape is really cool, okay? Using a stereo headset, it lets a person who's blind or low vision hear where the landmarks are around them in 3D. And in this way, they can build a richer awareness of their surroundings and feel more independent and confident to explore the world beyond what they know.
That's pretty cool. So it's kind of like it paints what's around you in sound.
That's exactly what it does. Shall we try it out?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, so you have the headset on.
Yes, I have the headset.
And you start by pressing around me and just listen to where the landmarks are and tell me where you're hearing them.
Around you.
On a smartphone.
Park 295 feet. Microsoft Building 34,
wow,
295
awesome.
feet.
Soundscape effectively takes the same map that you have running on the phone and plays it in 3D sound. Isn't that cool?
That is so awesome.
With Soundscape, instead of turn-by-turn instructions, we will place an audio beacon on Building 34 so we can hear where it is.
Got it.
Okay?
So this app knows how to rendezvous with that beacon.
Exactly. So
okay.
We'll set the beacon.
Okay.
Okay, there's a button to
and
set
so
the
should
beacon.
I also do the same?
Yeah, do exactly the same. And on the top of the list, you'll see Building 34 access ramps.
I'll do that.
Access ramp.
Yeah.
Beacon 285
okay.
feet.
Access ramp. And on your right ear, you'll start hearing a clicking sound. Can you hear that? Let's turn towards the way you're hearing the beacon.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's completely centered, and you hear a bell sound that tells you we are pointing at Building 34. Okay?
Yep.
Now, of course, we can't walk. There's a road on the way.
That's correct.
So let's walk along the road and find a place to turn right.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Straight on. You can hear the beacon on your right as we walk along here.
So I know that I'll have to at some point turn right.
That's right. So I'll start cueing the dog to find a crossing. Ever find a crossing? You might have received
the in fact I got
announcement.
Yeah.
Okay. Ever find a crossing? So you really work together with the app as well as the dog in this case.
Yeah.
Are you safe to cross?
Yes, we are.
Further forward. And now, as the beacon straightens up right in front of us, you should be able to hear the beacon right in front, which tells us that we are walking in a straight line towards our destination.
Yes. But the interesting thing here is this can be useful for anybody who's in a new space, even if you're fully sighted.
That's right. This is inclusive design in action.
Correct. Yeah, because as you said, you land up in a parking lot or you land up in a campus that you don't know anything about. And obviously in our campus, our buildings are not numbered in sequence. Very helpful.
Building 34.
Good boy, Trevor. And we are at the access ramp.
That's right.
Good boy,
That's
Trevor.
awesome.
Boy.
That is really awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Amos. This is such a wonderful work. Where can people go get this app?
People can get the app for free on the iOS App Store in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and we're working to get it to other countries as well.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Smiling, they shake hands. Microsoft.
Great to be able to add Ireland to the list at the end there as well.
And of course,
I noticed just there, yeah, exactly, yeah. I noticed there actually that it was actually quite a good demonstration of what you were talking about, just the fact that it doesn't take all of your attention. So we we could hear the sound effects coming from Soundscape, but it didn't stop us listening to the dialogue that was going on there. It actually helped us to be able to stay focused on what we were talking about as well. Nice kind of demonstration of that.
That's not a coincidence, as you can imagine, Jude. I mean, there's a lot of research behind this and how we as people are able to actually do quite a lot if the information is delivered in the right way, in a way that doesn't contradict or interact. So, for example, the audio beacon doesn't have any words, doesn't have language other than the occasional distance call out. But you always know where it is. You can always hear it, and it doesn't get in the way of the ability to listen to another conversation, to attend to another conversation. Unlike, for example, step-by-step instructions, you all know the situation in cars when the next announcement comes up, everybody in the car has to be quiet and listen to the instruction.
Yeah.
And once that's over and the turn was taken, then we can continue the conversation. That doesn't happen with Soundscape because it operates at different channels.
Yeah, very good. And that is kind of, it is very easy to keep your attention on those other things. It's nice to have that example of that. What we might do at the moment, and stay with us, Jarnell and Amos as well, jump in and out of the conversation as we go through the rest of the show as well, wherever suits. But we might introduce Fraser, Carr and Stephen Abrams at this point, both working as testers and analysts with Soundscape as well. You're very welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
Hi.
And
thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us, and great that you unmuted immediately as well. It makes it all run smoothly. Brilliant. Very good. So maybe we can actually kind of break down some of the features a little bit more then, because we've talked about markers and beacons and things like that. Could you just give us a little bit of a run through? Again, we won't get into kind of major technical stuff here, but just give us a bit of a run through about how the markers and beacons actually work. How easy is it to set a marker, for example, and how can you use that?
Yeah, okay, I'll have a go at answering that one. So, where do you start? Let's in Soundscape, you can effectively set a beacon on any location you choose. Now, with Soundscape's search facility, for example, you could search for, let's take, for example, the Spire, which is in the middle of Dublin, which is something that everyone notices and helps them orientate themselves around the city. Now, if you were to use Soundscape, you could search for the Spire using the search facility, set an option to set a beacon on it, and immediately you'll hear this audio sound that comes from the Spire. So you can turn your head in any direction, and if the Spire is to your right, you'll hear this beacon sound coming from your right ear. If it's behind you, you'll hear that beacon sound behind you. But if you're facing it, you'll hear the beacon. And there's a difference when you're facing it. You'll get a different kind of sound, which indicates you are facing the Spire. And you just use that sound to help you orientate yourself or navigate yourself towards the Spire. And that can apply to any location you wish in your environment or wherever you may be. Now, markers are kind of like, let's say, favorites or important places. So many people will set their favorite cafe, a marker on that cafe, and that is added to your list of markers. It just gives you easier access to those places that are of more importance to you or favorite places. Some people have markers set on bus stops, some on their home. There is also another option within Soundscape where you can set a marker on your current location. Now, your current location could just be a bench in a park, and it's a place you like to sit and have a cup of coffee. Just mark it and save that to your list. And in the future, if you ever want to find that bench, you just set a beacon on it and just make your way towards it. So that's how, very quickly, I can explain how markers and beacons kind of work. I don't know if I've explained that
Yeah, absolutely. What I might do just is follow up with one question that's come in from one of our listeners at the moment, just asking about the beacon there. As you mentioned that you can set maybe a marker on a bench, you could use that as a beacon, I guess, then if you wanted to. But does it always have to be a physical object, or is it basically taking it from whatever your location is on a map setup and map system?
It's effectively anywhere. I mean, for example, it could be a cricket pitch, it could be a building, it could be an entrance, it could be a car park. It's any location. Now, some of these locations are places you can actually search for because they are. We use, for example, in the background, without going into too much detail, we get our data from Openstreetmap, which is an open source mapping tool. And that's how many of the cities are mapped. And we also use Bing to supply us with data. You can basically set a marker on any of those places where data is already present, or on any location that you choose. Anything. It could be that there's a dangerous corner, an overhanging tree. You could set a marker on it, so you could do it anywhere.
Very good. So is that sort of similar then? If you were thinking of kind of a map system, it's kind of like pinning a location. It doesn't have to be on something.
Absolutely, it could be in anything or anywhere you like. Amos, you were about to say something. You're going to add something?
I just wanted to clarify exactly that point, that you can create it when you press current location, it just takes your XY coordinates and places a marker there. So if you're going to the beach and you want to mark the point that you entered the beach so that you can get back from there, at that point you just press current location, choose create marker, and you've got it. And then you can take a walk on the beach, go anywhere. And then when you choose to go back, you set a beacon to that marker and you walk straight there.
Brilliant. Yeah, very simple, very straightforward. So that's both setting it and then being able to use it. You can choose from any of your markers on the list that you've got and set a beacon to any of those quite easily. It's kind of a shortcut to it, isn't it? You mentioned there the XY axis. Just maybe a follow-up question to that. Is there, and maybe this is a limitation at the moment, but just interesting to find out where the boundaries are with this. If it's, say, like a business on a second or third floor of a building, is it able to get the fact that it's not on the ground floor, for example? Will it lead you to the building, or will it lead you to the business?
It will lead you to a building may contain numerous businesses.
Yeah.
And Soundscape doesn't differentiate with floors as of yet. It's pretty much just imagine a flat map. So if you're looking at a flat map and you see shapes and points, that's kind of how Soundscape sees the world at the moment. Even though, for example, a tower building may contain 25 floors and businesses within that floor, if the address of that business happens to be at the same point as 25 other businesses, you'll end up going to the same point. But once you're there, you're going to have to ask someone, which floor is it to that specific business. So that we're not there at that point yet, but we'll get you to at least the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good just to have the clarity as well. Very interesting. So we talked about kind of just as you come to like junctions or intersections before. So let's say you've set your beacon and you've got this audio clue that's bringing you towards where you want to go. You're following a road down, you come to an intersection. What sort of information do you get at that point?
Fraser? Fraser, go for it.
So as you approach an intersection, Soundscape uses this spatial audio that Amos mentioned to tell you which direction each road at that intersection goes in. We know that maybe not everyone uses a headset, so we also tell you the direction. So if you imagine you're approaching like a crossroads, you hear the name of the road that goes left, goes ahead, and goes right, and they sound like they're coming from that direction. This also happens if you're walking down and you're just approaching a side road that goes to the left. You'll hear about that. Kind of the spatial audio and the directions kind of help force that kind of model of the road layout.
Very good.
It also works like 3-way, 4-way intersections.
Excellent. Yeah. So if you're coming up to a junction, you've got Dublin Street on the left and Main Street continues straight on or whatever, you'll hear from your left headphone into your left ear, you'll hear Dublin Street.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, exactly
Very
like
good.
that.
Yeah, very good. Very useful. So
Jude, just to add to that, I think it's an important point. Part of the kind of inspiration for the design of the way that an intersection is called out is that you get the layout of the intersection as well, because if you hear a road on your left and a road in front, you know that you're on the top of a T intersection, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll be on the wrong. Let's say you're walking on the left of the road, but the T intersection is off to the right, so you're never going to bump into that road. You never, yeah. But if you're looking for a place to turn right, you're actually getting that information that there's a road over on the other side of the road that you can take a right at, and so you'll be looking for a place to cross. You'll cross and then you'll take that road. So it really is very, very succinctly gives you the layout of the intersection as well as the names of the roads to look out for. And it will also confirm to you once you took the turn which road you ended up on, in case you rotated a bit too much.
Yes, yeah, very good. And actually, that emphasizes again the idea of it still being your choice, that you've got like the opportunity to turn right, but as you were saying before, it's not necessarily prescribing it; it's just describing the opportunity. Yeah, very nice.
It's also quickly worth adding that we also do roundabouts. So you'll hear Soundscape will announce to you approaching a roundabout with 6 exits. If it's one of those really complicated ones, it will tell you that. So you can prepare yourself for what lies ahead. So it's not just, we don't just handle standard intersections, but also those nice little roundabouts that we have everywhere.
Yeah, very good. Do you know this is a question maybe that could come up in a couple of sections, but just we had a question in just now, which kind of fits in now as well, just about if you're walking along, how does it tell which direction is which? So for example, do you have to have your phone out in your hand and pointed in the direction you're facing for it to understand how to give you directions properly?
So that's a great question. If you have your phone out in your hand, then we will use the phone compass. But if you put the phone in your pocket, so you can just put it away hands-free, then we use the direction that you're traveling in.
Okay.
So we just know which direction you're traveling in and assume that you're facing the same direction that you're traveling, which most of the time works. There's also other headsets like the AirPod Pros, which actually contain sensors in them, which can tell Soundscape which way you're facing. In which case, we then don't need to use the sensors on the phone for that at all, and we can literally track your head movement. So if you're facing the opposite way to you're walking, then it will still be spatialized correctly for you.
I guess that is quite a valuable extra accessory, is it? Because obviously, if you're walking along and you're getting kind of sound cues, but you turn your head to it, it's kind of those accessories that will monitor that will allow you to get a more accurate view of it as you turn your head, but not necessarily change your direction of walking.
Yes, it does. It does give quite a nice experience.
Yeah, very good.
And just to sort of add on that a little bit, Jude. And I think the Robbie in the Q&A just sort of asked that question as well. And I think Michael Lee in the radio interview with Chantelle this morning mentioned it as well. And we're seeing increasingly more and more headphones coming to the market that have sensors built in, simply because of the greater set of experiences or capabilities that embedding sensors in headphones allow companies to create technologies around. So this is certainly a trend that we expect will continue to pick up in the months and years ahead. But for now, the AirPods Pro, as Michael mentioned, are a great example of having a more heads-up and hands-free experience is how we often refer to it.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. That's really handy. Just to kind of finish out on that point as well, just as a follow-up, let's say you do have the phone in your pocket and it's monitoring your movement and it's giving you your directions based on your direction of travel, or not directions, but it's giving you your cues based on your direction of travel. what happens if you stop, but your phone is still in the pocket? How do you get out of that scenario where it it can't use your direction of travel?
There are basically three travel modes, let's call it, that Soundscape automatically takes into consideration. So, for example, if you are stationary, we know you're stationary. And so, for example, there's a button in Soundscape which is called My Location. And if you were to press that button while you were stationary, Soundscape will tell you which way you're facing. But if you start moving down a road or whatever, and you were to press the same button while you were walking, Soundscape will know that you're walking and will say, oh, you're heading along this road. Not facing anymore, you're heading. And it will even go as far as identify that you are in a vehicle. So if you're on a bus, a tram, a train, okay, and you press the same button, where am I, my location, it will say, oh, you're traveling in this direction, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't matter whether you're standing still or whether you're moving, we are always aware of it, and we will always tell you what's in your environment relative to whatever you're doing at that point in time.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's
that was an excellent explanation, Stephen. To be precise with the point that was asked, when you're stationary and we lose the direction of your movement, and then you will need to, if you want to query Soundscape for more specific information, you'll need to pull your phone out for Soundscape to get the compass. Obviously, that's if you don't have head tracking headset.
Yeah.
But the only information that you will, the beacon will continue and will estimate in which direction you are, and once you start moving in another direction, it will correct itself.
Excellent. So it's actually very simple to get yourself out of it. Just take the phone out and
pull the phone out, and immediately it snaps to using the compass. You can sometimes it's useful to move the phone about left and right and really get a good sense for where things are, and then carry on with your walk.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. And again, just we're getting a lot of questions in at the moment, but just before we leave, talking about some of the features, and particularly we were talking about markers and beacons a moment ago, and we talked about setting a marker. Just again, to clarify, question from Christina here, can you set markers before you travel to it? So you don't have to have visited there beforehand to set a marker, do you?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much time we got here, but I'll be quick. Of course, you can search, as I said before, search for any location, even if it's ahead of time, and set markers on them. So if you're visiting somewhere, a restaurant, somewhere you haven't been to, you can search for it, set a marker on it, and and you'll hear that marker called out when you are there, or set a beacon on it. But we have forgot to mention a fantastic feature called Street Preview, which also allows you to preview in advance of travel different places that anywhere in the world. Okay, you can just preview it. At the moment, it's kind of like an intersection jumper. You can land at a location and jump between intersections and get a feel for the road layouts, the directions of places. And you can still do things like my location and what's around me and what's ahead of me while you're in that preview mode. So there's a lot you can do ahead of time before you actually go out there and travel, which, so hopefully we've answered that question for her.
Very good. Yeah, no, that's a really interesting feature. And maybe even just to take a moment longer on that with the street preview. So you're saying basically that when you go into street preview, it's almost like it's letting you hear the cues that you will hear when you are on the route.
Not quite. That's more like a simulation, where what you're describing there is if I wanted to walk between a block or a street, I would like to hear everything that's in between. We talked about that, and that's something that we're aware of. At the moment, it's literally, I'm going to go from this part of the road to the next intersection along that road. So we kind of miss out the stuff in between at the moment. Yeah. But we're walking towards this. This is pretty much a new feature that we've had for a few months, and there's a lot more we can do with it.
And it's more like kind of key features then, by the sounds of it. You're kind of skip to the next section of the road or something. Is that it?
Kind of, yeah, absolutely. But I think there's still a lot of detail in between intersections that we would like to include, but that's something for the future.
Yeah, very good. So maybe now that we've kind of talked about just some of the features, and obviously we're given a taster here of all of these features, and really somebody wants to get it in their hands to try this out, just to understand how the features fully work. But can we talk just for a few minutes even just about the design process? Were there any particular elements that you wanted to include that presented a particular obstacle, for example, in the design process? Anything that was a particular thing to get over to bring Soundscape to fruition?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, there've been a number of challenges, I guess, over the course of the project, is going right back to when Chantelle was talking about the fountains and right from the kind of the inception of the project.
Yeah.
So originally, I mean, it started way back as kind of a proof of concept here in Reading in the UK, where we literally walked around Reading town centre and mapped some points of interest around the centre. And then we could go around, walk, hear them called out, and as a real, as I say, proof of concept, just check that the idea of sort of Soundscape would work.
Yeah.
And it did. So we then had the question of, right, how do you actually make this into an app that's scalable, works outside of this kind of 200-meter square area?
Yeah.
And the first question you have is like, what's the best maps to use? What's accurate? What's up to date? What's kind of used worldwide, which is how we ended up kind of with Openstreetmap. So it's a kind of publicly editable, anybody can add things that are missing, and it seemed relatively up to date. So that was kind of the first big obstacle, was this scalability of the mapping software. And then after that, we had like a load of sort of, with our early beta testers, we have the challenges that the users would come up with, which is questions like, oh, I don't know that I'm approaching an intersection. So that then gets us to look at the data, work out, right, well, we know where the intersection is on the map. How can we kind of call this out in a Soundscape way to try and, saying earlier, like make it kind of mappable just from hearing the words. And then also other things like Stephen was mentioning about the markers. We've got like obstacles like, well, not everything that you kind of need to know about is mapped. Like overhanging trees aren't mapped. Your favorite bench isn't mapped, which kind of brought us onto the marker feature. Is that obstacle to how we could overcome the mapping deficit almost, and it kind of came about to this really nice feature that enables people to kind of personalize Soundscape and make it more meaningful to them.
Very good. That's actually very helpful as well, I guess, because we talked about markers earlier in connection with beacons and almost being like your favorites or whatever. But if you were then, let's say you're going down a route that you go down regularly and there's an obstacle that you know is there. So let's say there is a low-hanging tree and you're constantly bumping into it, or you brush against it or whatever. You can set a marker there and you'll get a warning ahead of time, basically from Soundscape, will you? Yes.
So you have to have been there to set it in the first place. But then then just before you reach it, next time you'll hear the call out telling you. You can add a description as well. So you can add a name and an annotation field. Yeah, excellent. So that's kind of, it's the dual purpose for your markers, I guess. We talked about setting a marker ahead of time for actually knowing a set place that you're going to, but then as you experience different things, you can set markers as well to just give you that more information. That's really helpful. I guess a lot of the actual app development would have been done prior to release in other countries, such as Ireland, for example, after its initial release. But what was involved in actually getting it ready to be released in a new country such as Ireland? So Ireland was interesting case, obviously, because you speak English, so it's far easier. For Soundscape to first ever be released in another country, we had to go through the whole app and translate it, which is quite a big process. You have to, especially terms like the beacon, obviously that doesn't translate. I don't necessarily want to translate it literally in different countries. The biggest challenge we had for Ireland was making sure that the voices pronounce things correctly. and well, hopefully we'll had good feedback so far.
It can be an issue sometimes with some place names and things. Yeah,
it's worth adding, Jude, that first of all, it's really important that there is a support framework for people in country, and the collaboration at NCBI, yourselves and others is critical to build and be ready. We also, and Chantelle may want to say a word on that, but we also very recently made the Soundscape available for anyone, which means that it's no longer classed as a medical device. While it was, then we needed to go through all the regulatory requirements, which really took longer to get into countries. But now we're not, so that allows us to get to Ireland quicker.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, excellent.
Well,
Do you know, I was just thinking, it sounds like actually that's probably a good time to bring Chantelle Smith into the conversation, because you mentioned they're kind of working along with NCBI, and obviously NCBI has been very involved in this as well. So welcome to Chantelle Smith. Good to have you back on the show, Chantelle.
Thanks, Jude. It's fantastic. I couldn't believe myself that it was show 11 that we first spoke of Soundscape. So it's fantastic.
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
It is incredible to have this fantastic opportunity to launch it in Ireland today.
Absolutely, and you've put a lot of work into this as well, so it's obviously very exciting for you to see launch day today. I know in your work behind the scenes, if you like, you've been able to maybe get an insight into some individual cases where the app has been really benefiting people. Are there any particular examples that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. So I guess last year was a bit of a challenging year. We all know that, around COVID-19, and so it did make it particularly difficult to test Soundscape in Ireland under those conditions. But we did a lot of that work with students that I'd already been working with in the National Training Centre. So I had already worked with them on their long cane skills, and they had foundational, really good foundational orientation and mobility skills, and I was able to introduce them to Soundscape as a follow-on from that. So one particular student, and we'll share a video of Michael shortly, and he won't mind me talking about him, but Michael. And there's been other people as well, but I guess Michael would have been the student that I worked most extensively with Soundscape. So I first introduced it to him virtually last year. He was really struggling when we went into lockdown, particularly to be able to go out and independently do his daily walk. So it was already a pre-established route that he would have done with his dad, but he just wanted to be able to get out and do it himself. So we introduced the Soundscape app, and that enabled him to be able to complete this route every day during lockdown. So he was able to keep active and maintain his mobility skills. I was able to remotely, in the first instance, share markers along that route for him.
Very good.
And I guess at different points along the road as well, I added in annotations. It was we made it into a bit more like a treasure hunt in some ways, to maintain his motivation over the course of some of those heavier lockdown periods.
Yeah. So I would imagine, was that kind of partially almost like testing it out and training somebody and getting feedback all at the same time? Was that the idea?
Well, I probably should shout out as well and say that I had used Soundscape previously in Australia. So I had experience introducing, and I guess that's why I was already a big fan of Soundscape and had good experience with other students in Australia, and that's why I was so eager to see it roll out in Ireland. So I guess we had planned to roll it, to do more of extensive testing with our service users ahead of lockdown. but then because of just the way the pandemic rolled out, we were very restricted in who we could do that testing with. So there was an element of, I guess, well, particularly for Michael, for testing the app, but for myself, it was more about whether it worked in Ireland, the local context. Yeah.
Seeing it kind of apply in a new environment as well. Very interesting. We have actually that video there that you mentioned, and just really nicely encapsulates the impact that it made on Michael's life. We'll show that video now if we can. We'll just get a sense of how much of a difference it made for Michael.
Chantelle Smith, National Access and Mobility Manager, NCBI.
I first met Michael in November 2019, and he came to NCBI after he had a sudden vision loss. He was experiencing a significant loss of confidence, and he was concerned about his balance and recent falls.
Michael Leahy, Microsoft Soundscape user.
I just did not know what to do or how to move forward. I couldn't go anywhere without someone with me. I was losing my fitness, losing my sense of self and all my self-confidence. And then Chantelle introduced me to Soundscape. We worked on the route that I knew, and we put notes down for lanes that I needed to go down with crossing points marked out.
Herbert Park Food Market, 80 metres. Elgin Road bus stop.
And it made that journey just seamless. Being mobile again, it's given me back my independence.
Approaching bus stop, 15 metres.
It's given me confidence to know when I'm making a journey that I have Soundscape there to remind me where I am.
Bus stop.
Ultimately, being able to come in here to work every day using Soundscape independently is just an amazing achievement. If you'd asked me a year ago before I started using Soundscape, I would have said it was impossible.
For Michael, the impact of Microsoft Soundscape was incredible. There's so many possibilities with what the app offers. So when you're thinking about mobility and travel, Microsoft Soundscape breaks down those barriers and allows people to get out and move freely within society and choose what they want to do from day to day.
Very good. So that's really amazing just to hear Michael's experience there as well. And Chantelle, as you're kind of listening to that experience, and obviously you've been working so much with Michael, you put so much work into Soundscape over the last however many months as well. It must be very satisfying to see, albeit that's just a snippet of the effect that it will have, but it must be very, very satisfying to see that effect that it had on Michael's life.
Absolutely, it's a little bit of coming full circle, and it's one of the best parts of being a mobility instructor. Ordinarily, is that we work with our students over a long period of time, and we build good rapport with them and trust, and to be able to have an additional tool, which is so fantastic with Soundscape over the course of COVID was brilliant. But I think the highlight for myself was seeing Michael independently catch the bus to work towards the end of last year, and really he has Soundscape there alongside him for reassurance and confidence. But he's getting on with things now, and I guess that's one of the really rewarding things about being a mobility instructor, is to see someone's journey right from the very start all the way to the end, or as far as we are through his story at this point.
Yeah, brilliant. And we look forward to hearing plenty more experiences as well.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Just to jump in here, and I know that at the risk of embarrassing Chantelle, we just have to give her a massive call out for the support, advocacy, enthusiasm over the last 18 months, over what we know has been an incredibly challenging time for everyone. But the constructive feedback and the engagement that she drove within Ireland has made today absolutely possible. Her role in this, we just can't sort of express how grateful we are for the work that she's been doing, and also representing the broader O&M community as well, because we know how important O&M's mobility instructors are and the work that they do. And having somebody like Chantelle express that faith and confidence in the technology, I mean, it's just so important. That's the sort of endorsement, obviously from service users like Michael. That's just so important, because it gives us an indication that this, technology is making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's certainly been noticeable to see the passion that Chantelle has been bringing to that as well over the last number of months and over the last year, really, I suppose. I think it was about a year ago that we spoke to Chantelle first about Soundscape on our live event, and that was already kind of quite a big thing. So yeah, absolutely, that shout out is well deserved, I think. Just coming back to yourself, Chantelle, and Amos as well, can we talk just briefly about maybe some of the kind of external elements to the app itself? So, for example, we talked earlier about the map system that it's using. I think Bing was mentioned. Is that something that's kind of hardwired into it, if you like, or can it also work with other navigation apps? Let's say you've got Google Maps running in the background and you have a direction thing giving you directions all the way through. Will the two work together, or do they kind of conflict with each other?
That's a great question. I think from as we discussed from the beginning of this discussion around Soundscape being invisible and in the background and not something that's sort of dominant in your foreground. When when a sighted person walks down the street and they see shops on either side in an intersection, they don't pay any attention to it, right? It's just there. It's in the kind of what I sometimes say is the edge of consciousness, right? You're not really conscious of it, but it's there. You can always attend to it, but you don't need to pay any attention to it. And Soundscape is designed to work exactly the same. Like, for example, you can listen to Soundscape, listen to the audio beacon, and listen to an audiobook at the same time. You can sit in a car, walk down the street, you can check your emails, you can, like we talked about, having a conversation with somebody else. And one of the other things that you can do at the same time is, if you do want to add other form of information to your navigation experience, whether it's turn-by-turn instructions from Google Maps, or whether it's one of the camera-based sort of object recognition apps, you can absolutely do that. And Soundscape will work in conjunction with that. If you are wearing your stereo headphones, because Soundscape, all the sound that Soundscape makes is in 3D, and all the sounds that you will hear from these other apps is centered in your head, you will hear them both, and you can decide which one to attend to without having to sort of choose one over another specifically. So that's very much part of the underlying design of this experience.
Interesting, yeah, excellent. So good to know that as well, and to kind of have confidence in that there's not going to be a problem with that. We talked earlier about it being on iOS devices, so an Apple iPhone. Is it out on Android yet, or what's the story with the Android release?
Sure, now that's a great question and not entirely unexpected as well. So thanks, Steve. The reality is that at the moment we are only available on iOS, and I'll let Fraser jump in a moment regarding the sort of devices and iOS versions on which it runs. And with respect to Android, I guess certainly from our perspective, when we first released it a couple of years ago, from the research that we carried out, we're aware that certainly amongst the blind and low vision community, the majority of people tended to use an iPhone. And because it was such new technology, we really wanted to get a sense of how people would respond to it. Would they get value? Would it make a difference in independence and mobility and enhancing their awareness when they're out and about? And I think as our confidence in that is growing, so is our research to sort of better understand, okay, what would be required to bring it to Android? Because we do recognize that at the moment, not being available does potentially, well, it does sort of exclude a number of people, but we are actively looking into it. We don't yet have a time frame that we can share, unfortunately, because as you can imagine, the technology that makes Soundscape work is pretty complex. So yeah, we're looking into it.
Yeah, very good. So it's not something that's there at the moment, but it's not to be counted out either. That's handy to know. When you're using it, then if you're using it on your iOS device and you've installed it, sometimes maybe people might just want to know what to be prepared for in terms of any permissions that it asks for that they should accept. What sort of permissions does it require?
So Soundscape asks for location permissions, which we need to know where you are to know what's around you. Device motion, motion and fitness, which is needed so that the direction of travel we were talking about earlier. We need that. We need the iPhone to tell you that you're walking, or tell us that you're walking, tell us that you're in a vehicle, so we know kind of how to make those callouts work. And then the other two permissions are Bluetooth, which is needed if you want, I think like the AirPod Pros, and then also notifications, just in case if there's sort of issues with Soundscape or there's updates you need to send out. Sometimes you might send a notification. And they're the four that we ask for.
What I would add, Jude, is I think a really important point to add to this is Soundscape does need your location and motion, but we don't collect any of that information. So from a privacy perspective, we collect only usage data. We don't know about the person, where they are, what they're doing. None of that information gets back to Microsoft or stored in any way.
Yeah, very good, and thanks for clarifying that as well. I think that'll be good to know for a lot of people. Maybe just to come back to a point that was mentioned earlier, it was actually kind of alluded to in the first video, but again, this is probably something that's nice to clarify when we're talking about how what other technology is needed for the app or how it works with other technology. I noticed in the first video that we had there that there was a pedestrian crossing that the guide dog brought yourself, Amos, to. Is that the idea that the app isn't necessarily designed as a standalone solution? And I know we've kind of covered some of this anyway, but is it isn't to replace somebody's mobility aid, is it? So, for example, the cane or the guide dog.
Yeah, no, it's like that's a spot on, Jude. I mean, it's not designed as an alternative mobility tool. It's designed as an audio map and navigation tool that anybody could use, but they still need to use their own mobility skills and tools that you use. So if you're a guide dog owner, you use a guide dog, absolutely do more with your guide dog, right? I think now with your enhanced awareness and enhanced confidence to get out and feel more independent, go and get your dog out for longer, more complex walks to new places. If it's a cane that you're using, again, the design of Soundscape is such that you put your phone away. The audio doesn't get in the way of the environmental input that you get. So use the maximum of your tools and the sensory input that you can get. Even if you use a sighted guide, so I'm blind myself. A lot of my use of Soundscape is alongside my wife who's sighted, right? And I use a guide dog, but often we go to places, we go together, and I have Soundscape on, and critically, it doesn't get in the way of our interaction, my wife and myself. And we would go walk around the streets in Seattle, or if we travel in places, and it just gives me a sense of I'm part of the experience. I know where we are, I know where we're going, I know what we're passing by. I'm part of the discussion about where should we go next. Sometimes I am the person who says, okay, there seems to be a cafe down this block on the right. Should we hop off for coffee? And I say, yeah. I think this is very critical to to the overall experience, and not being a navigation tool.
Brilliant.
By itself.
It's actually really good just to get the clarification on that, and probably one of the main reasons I asked that is just we've had a little bit of experience before with maybe new technology that comes along, and because it is amazing, it can sometimes seem as if it's an all-in-one solution almost, that it replaces so many other things because it's amazing. But this is amazing precisely because it works with other things, isn't it? It's like that's nearly one of the best things about this, is that it's not blocking off all these other things, and it's designed to work along with so many other things as well.
Yeah, and hopefully in a few minutes we can talk about some of the things that will that are in the pipeline, and refer to some of the additional examples of that. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that, just to sort of reinforce that point, Jude, just taking into account as much as possible the context that the person is in, whether they're blind or low vision or whether they're sighted. We all have a range of different sort of activities, preferences, etc. when we're out and about, and taking as much of that into account as possible and having the technology complement that, I think has been one of the underlying design principles that we've always used to guide and inform the work. And as you can imagine, over the years we've had many prototypes that we've just had to throw away because we felt that they weren't in tune with what the person wanted or hoped for. And that's not to say that we think we're perfectly there. No, of course not. But we do feel that there's sufficient value that's being provided that some of the drawbacks associated with carrying a piece of technology, pairing it, adjusting it, etc., are well worth the effort.
Yeah, very good. You mentioned earlier, Chantelle, just the idea that this is an app that's kind of designed for all. It's not kind of limited in its scope. In what ways would you say that this is an app for all? Like, can you just expand on that a little bit? And we'll ask just in a moment as well about where it's going in the future. But just even for the moment, why would this not necessarily be only for somebody who's maybe got a vision impairment?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Right from the very beginning, when we were thinking about the experience of Soundscape and some of the technologies that we're exploring, we always wanted to design and develop technology that wouldn't necessarily be categorized as belonging to or suitable only for a certain category of people. We wanted to remove some of that sort of stigma that is often associated with technology built for or designed and developed for people with disabilities, because we felt that designing something that works for everybody, intentionally so, thereby increases the access and inclusion for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's true, we work very closely with guide dogs in the UK, and particularly with people in the blind and low vision community, because we knew that if we could make the experience work well with some of those constraints and some of those challenges, then almost by default, by doing it in a very human-centric way, we were confident it would work well for everybody else. And there's great examples in the digital space, there's great examples in the physical space, such as dropped curbs and door handles, which all originated from addressing a need or a challenge that a person with a disability face. But ultimately, they proved to be useful and incredibly effective for everybody in a whole range of different situations. And Soundscape is just like that. And we've created a whole gamut, and we continue to create a whole series of experiences that are designed for everybody. About 18 months or so ago, we released a sort of a tourist-inspired soundscape experience at the Skyview Visitor Centre in Stockholm, which afforded these wonderful 360-degree panoramic views of the Stockholm skyline. But with Soundscape, we were able to guide a person towards a specific landmark on the horizon and then virtually transport them there. We're looking at creating heritage trails, treasure hunts. So there's a whole host of experiences that, in addition to when, as a sighted person, if you're using Soundscape, and I use it all the time when I'm going to a place I'm not particularly familiar with, it just makes me sort of feel more reassured because I'm not carrying my phone in my hand, looking at that blue dot on the map. And we fully are looking to sort of make that more and more prevalent in terms of the range of experiences in order to make it more appealing and more attractive to everybody.
Yeah, it's great actually, because it really does kind of fit in with that idea of being inclusive. It really is inclusive because it's there for everyone. We talked there a little bit about obviously it's such a powerful app at the moment. It's such an exciting thing to be able to release the Soundscape app today and to have that launched and be able to actually access it and try it out. And I'm sure there's plenty of people wanting to give it a go now and to download it onto their devices. But where do you see it going from this point on? What kind of further potential is there for Soundscape to expand, maybe even in the future?
There is a range of horizons here that we think of. In the immediate term, in the immediate term, and the really exciting things that we're working on right now. The one is Chantelle talked at length about her work as an orientation and mobility instructor with clients, and one of the things that we've been working with Chantelle and a number of other orientation and mobility instructors around the world is how some of the tools that Soundscape can actually provide O&M to help them be more effective in training, more effective sometimes during the challenge time of remote training, which is crazy. Who would have thought that we would be doing remote O&M training? But we do. Yeah. And so we've been working to develop some tools to help with that. Actually, the street preview, the virtual experience of Soundscape, is one of the first tools, again, in support of O&M. The O&M can work with the student on a route. They can map it for them in Soundscape using markers, which they then share with the student. And then the student can practice that route from home so that they can build that mental map. Yeah. And one of a tool that we're working on now is that they can actually build a route for a student, sequence the route, to sequence those markers, and then they start the route, and then the audio beacon will hop from one marker to the next as they progress through the route, whether they do it well, initially that's going to work when they're out and about, so they can actually, if let's say your route involves getting to one side of a parking lot and now you have to cross a big open space to another side of the parking lot, you can put a marker on the other side there, and then create another marker, a third marker on that route, and have those markers hop from one to the next. And that the important aspect here is that it gives a tool for the O&M instructor in their work with their student. Right. And that's something that's again coming into the arsenal or the toolkit that O&Ms can have to develop to work with students. The other aspect, which is related and we think is really exciting, is the use of Soundscape for adaptive sports activities. Wow. So that's when, say, an organization works offering hiking trails, orienteering, kayaking, cross-country skiing, various kind of sporting activities. We are working. We have been playing around with that for a couple of years now, with a few groups in the US and a little bit in Sweden as well, to use Soundscape for that purpose. So you can place an audio beacon, a series of audio beacons, say on a lake, and kayak from one to the next, and the blind person is driving the kayak entirely independently. Not that there's nobody around to make sure that they're safe, but nobody is telling them left a bit, right a bit. If you know what I mean. Yeah, they can. Yeah. And
see why you're excited by that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean it's something else. There's no other experience like that. Once you start doing that, you really do feel in the driving seat. You don't have to go straight from one point to the next. You can zigzag, you can go eights, and you always know where you are. We've had a guy in Africa who was telling us about how he uses Soundscape when he windsurfs.
Yeah.
And he always has a marker on the point on the beach where he needs to get back to, and he uses that point to always have a good reference point for when he windsurfs. And we are releasing pretty soon a set of tools for adaptive sports organizations to set up these kind of that they can use to set up these kind of courses, share it with the participants in programs, and really use Soundscape for these kind of experiences. So these are, I think, some really exciting next steps. And I'll tell you, Jude, we have seen that adaptive sports experience is a great introduction to orientation and mobility. People who have lost their sight, sometimes they don't start getting back to life just by going to their nearest O&M provider and starting to work on their commute. Sometimes taking them out and taking them on a trail, or letting them feel that they can get back to activity in the social environment is the best way back in. Yeah, and we've seen that time and time again.
As well. Yeah.
And just to sort of reinforce that, it's these exact same tools for adaptive sports and mobility specialists, which will then also allow a whole host of other, let's say, third parties to be able to create their own Soundscape themed or Soundscape inspired experiences. Whether you're a service provider responsible for a particular space and you want to bring that space to life, you can absolutely do it using pretty much the exact same tool. If you want to, as an individual, create something for a friend, or create a little sort of almost family network, and create this little game of. I think Michael in the interview this morning just described as one of the things that Chantelle did with him as a bit of a treasure hunt. Then, using those exact same tools, you'll be able to do that.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, it's great to see that there's still so much scope for it to be used in other things as well. It's been brilliant to talk to you all about all of the Soundscape team, and Chantelle as well, particularly with all the work that's gone in there about the development of Soundscape, what it does, all the features and where it's going. But we do have just a few minutes before we finish up, where we've got a few questions that have come in. We've kind of included a lot of the questions as we've gone through the interview, but maybe I can just ask JP or Sean if there's one or two other questions that have come in that we could get an answer to as well while we have a few minutes left.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jude. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear all about Soundscape today, and it's really very exciting that it's now available in Ireland. So yeah, we have several questions that have come in over the last while that you might be able to help answer. The first one is kind of a straightforward one. Does it work on older iPhones?
So it works on iPhones running iOS 13 and higher. I think every iPhone we work on runs those. So it's the iPhone 6S and the iPhone SE.
Yeah.
There's two SEs. It's the
second generation.
The newer one works, and the older one still works as well, as long as it's running iOS 13.
Yes. Okay.
And just to add to that, it's worth noting that there's actually just a very small fraction of people from the research that we've done that are running iOS 13. And we'd always encourage people to update to the latest operating system if your phone will support it, because that will help ensure that Soundscape is current.
Yeah, so best to keep up to date with have the latest updates on the phone then, Chantelle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, and thanks, Stephen, as well. Just two more we might just get through if you don't mind. How do I make the editing language change from Danish to English UK? I have selected English UK, but the keyboard still shows in some foreign language.
Is the user saying that the language hasn't changed within Soundscape when they make that change, or
That's
outside of?
Like what they're saying here.
So if you change the language within Soundscape, it should change everything within Soundscape instantly to the language that's been chosen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your phone and other apps outside of Soundscape will be changed to that language. So there's two places you can change your language. You can change it at a device level, which is through the phone settings, or you can change it within Soundscape. And therefore, if you change it within Soundscape, the change is only within Soundscape. If they're seeing something different to that, I'd be happy to take that offline and follow it up. But it should work, and it should be pretty straightforward.
Great. You want to give your email address, Stephen?
Do you think I should, Amos?
No, I think you should give soundscape@microsoft.com is the way to get in touch with us. Soundscape@microsoft.com, and we look at that all the time and respond to questions. So if there's a specific issue that this person asked isn't resolving, then we'll definitely help them debug it.
Thank you, Amos and Stephen. There's one more question, if you don't mind. People with a hearing loss can have difficulty working out sound direction. Presumably, hearing aid wearers can connect to the app on their phone with Bluetooth, if available. Do you know if that has an impact on the 3D sound effect?
Yeah, yes, this was the question from Marion. I think I may have just responded to her directly. Yeah, my apologies for not sort of hitting everyone. Yes, so we know that with respect to hearing loss, that there's a whole spectrum of hearing loss, and this is something that we're actively looking at as well. But when it comes specifically to hearing aids, we've done a little bit of work in this area, and those that pair over Bluetooth to the iPhone actually work pretty well with Soundscape, and it doesn't really have any discernible effect on the 3D spatialization effect either. And the great thing about them is that certainly a lot of the modern ones don't really obstruct too much of what's going on in the outside world either.
Yes. And Chantelle, there's actually a follow-on question from that. Someone has asked, which are the best headphones to use with Soundscape, in your opinion? For example, AirPod Pros, which would support spatial audio, or maybe bone conductor headphones like Aftershocks.
It really will just come down to user preference. One of the things that we sort of designed Soundscape for is to make sure that people were comfortable using it with their existing stereo-based headphones, whatever they were and wherever they were. And one thing that we're particularly excited by is that more and more devices are coming onto the market that have sensors built in, that allow the outside world in as well. And because we know that certainly in the blind and low vision community, that putting something over your ears or in your ears can be quite anxiety inducing in some way. But we're really excited about those innovations. I think Fraser mentioned earlier on that Soundscape actually works as well without any headphones. Yes. You won't get obviously the stereo spatialization effect, but you'll be able to use your phone as a pointing device and still be able to discern where things are.
Okay, great. So it's largely down to user preference then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thanks,
it is. I do want to emphasize the point that Chantelle made about headphones that allow you to hear the environmental sound is critical. Bone conductions are great for that. The series of Bose frames that people have used, people enjoy as well. AirPods are pretty good at that. I wouldn't say that they're perfect. They block a little bit, but it's down to people's preference. So that notion of being able to hear environmental sound is key. At the same time, what Chantelle said, if you are uncomfortable with headphones, that's perfectly fine as well. You can listen to Soundscape on your phone. You can have a single earpiece. We're still doing some work to make that even better. And you may over time decide that I'm now more confident. I will start to use stereo headphones, but again, the right ones that don't block your ears.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks, Amos. Thanks for answering all those questions. I said we're delighted the Soundscape app is now available in Ireland, and no doubt it's going to be a very helpful navigational tool for many blind and low vision users. So thanks again. Back over to you, Jude.
Very good. So yeah, it's been a great show. Thank you very much to Chantelle and Amos and Fraser and Stephen as well for joining us from Soundscape, and of course our own Chantelle Smith as well. We really look forward to seeing how people use it, because I know it's one of those things that can be used in a number of different ways, and it's something that people's own experiences will probably inform us quite a lot in the future. Some of the things that they use it for, because it's so versatile. It'll be very interesting just to hear some of the user experiences as well. So by all means, for all of our listeners, please do get in touch with us. Let us know how you get on with that as well. We'd love to hear from you in relation to that. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Amos. Thank you, Chantelle. Thank you, Fraser. And thank you, Stephen, for joining us from Soundscape today. And we look forward to trying that out a bit more. And Chantelle, thank you for all the work that you've done to be able to get it to this point as well in Ireland, and to be able to get us to launch day and see the excitement that comes from that as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's show. Just a reminder again, of course, that if you need any technology assistance, you can get support from the Labs team here from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday on 1850 92 30 60, or you can email labs@ncbi.ie and we'll help you out with whatever technology issues that you have, to the best of our ability anyway. I always worry about saying something like we'll help you out with any technology issues that you have, but we'll certainly give you the assistance that'll help you. If you want to avail of wider NCBI services, you can call 1850 33 43 53, or you can email info@ncbi.ie. Of course, we always appreciate your support of NCBI, and if you'd like to make a donation to help support our services, you can do that through donate.ncbi.ie. And just a quick reminder as well, on the back of one innovation that we've been talking about here today, another innovation that we've talked about a few times, the NCBI Smart Hub. If you want to be involved in the development there as a tester of the NCBI Smart Hub, please do let us know by emailing smarthub@ncbi.ie. And just before we go, just a very quick reminder of what we'll be talking about in future live events. We're going to be talking to our colleagues in RNIB about technology very soon, and we're also going to be talking about Site Tech Global, a new annual event that's just had its first iteration last year, and it's coming up again in December this year. Our next live event is going to be held on Tuesday, August 17th at the usual time of 2:30. And if you want to stay up to date with what's happening on our live events, as well as plenty more, you can subscribe to our newsletter on our website, or you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie if you'd like to do that. So all that's left for me to do today is to thank our guests once again from Soundscape and from NCBI today. And of course, thanks to everyone listening in as well. And from Sean, JP and myself, goodbye for now, and we look forward to having you all back with us soon for another NCBI Labs live event.